I would take exception to that, ma'am.
We're going to bring this to a close. I want to thank you very much for making your presentation.
Okay.
We have a presentation by the El Centro Police Department dispatchers regarding their far-reaching arm of the dispatch family with the dispatchers from Newton, is that Connecticut?
Honorable Mayor and council members, good evening. My name is Eddie Madueño with the El Centro Police Department. Over the years, the council and the city manager have often expressed their appreciation to city employees for the work that they do on a daily basis. So tonight I would just want to offer one more example of the type of employees that we have here in our city. Almost 1 year ago on December 14, 2012, a 20-year-old man forced his way onto the campus of Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, then proceeded to shoot and kill 26 people. 6 of them were adults, school staff. 20 of the victims were children, ages 6 to 7 years old. First responders arrived and the individual took his own life. A few days after that, I walked into our dispatch center, and from the ceiling, I saw 26 individual cutouts hanging from ribbons. I provided some photos of what the dispatch center looked like that day. They had 6 cutouts were star-shaped that represented the adults that were killed that day. And there were 20 separate cutouts with pictures of angels representing the children that were killed. Our dispatchers had wanted to hang those up to honor the victims. I walked in there and I just thought it was a fitting tribute, and I was impressed that our employees had decided to do that. Those cutouts stayed in our dispatch center till after the new year, and then they brought them down. I came and find out that our dispatchers had discussed sending a gift basket to the dispatchers of Newtown Police Department and a card to let them know that they were in our thoughts and prayers. But they decided to wait till some time passed because the community there had rallied around everyone. In June of this year, some of our dispatchers were able to watch a webinar by the Director of Communication from the Newtown Police Department. And they decided, it's time to act. So they sent a gift basket and a card expressing their support, that they were still thinking about them. About a week later, they received a phone call from one of the dispatchers thanking them for their gesture and for their support. That was followed a few days later. They received a packet, and it contained this card, and I provided a copy also, and it was signed by the dispatchers expressing their gratitude for keeping them in their thoughts and prayers. They also sent these bracelets. Looks like they've adopted the color green in remembrance of the victims. They sent them for all of our dispatchers, as well as a rubber duck with a green ribbon, and then a challenge coin commemorating the victims. And they asked our dispatchers to keep those in dispatch as a reminder of the work that they do on a daily basis. I didn't hear this from a dispatcher. I heard it from their supervisor, Maria Birdsall. She really wanted to be here today, but she had some work done on her knees, so she's recuperating. But we do have our lead dispatcher, Heather Johnson, and a few of our dispatchers. We have Diana Martinez. Jennifer Hill was here, but she had to go to work. Maggie Diaz, Nicole House. We also have one of our officers, Joe Carruthers. Did I list all the dispatchers? So about 50% of our dispatchers were here. The others are working or getting ready to go to work. We're very proud of the compassion, the empathy that they showed, and I just wanted you to be aware of it. This was, international news. It was a huge tragedy. I believe it was the second largest mass murder, especially on a school in our country. the fact that they reached out to their fellow dispatchers and then heard back from them, I think is a testament to the character of the people that we have working for our city. I just wanted all of you to be aware of it. Again, Heather Johnson is their first line supervisor. I'm sure if you have questions or anything, but I just really wanted to recognize them for their actions.
Well, we certainly want to thank you for taking the opportunity to make this presentation. These are the kind of things that we're looking for and we like to hear. So we applaud you and the dispatchers for a job well done.
Thank you.
Ms. Walker, you have anything you'd like to add?
I can't imagine the shock and horror of that day for these dispatchers. And I know that our dispatchers are faced with some pretty horrific things that they need to deal with on a daily basis. And I just want to commend you, because I think it takes a really special person to be able to keep their cool under those kinds of circumstances. And I'm very proud, very, very proud.
Ms. Sanders?
Yes, if the young ladies and gentlemen would not mind standing, we've been sitting here for an hour and a half. You can stand and let us all see who you are, and so we can give you a round of applause for your efforts. And thank them for their show of compassion.
Thank you very much.
Very briefly, I have a different take on dispatchers now. I saw the young lady that was in the news not too long ago that talked the gunman down from shooting kids, and how the dispatcher they were saying how cool she was and how she was able not to get rattled and maybe cause something to happen that shouldn't have. And because she was able to do that, it saved, the guy had something like 500 rounds and had an opportunity to do a lot of hurt. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
And so I thought dispatchers have an awful lot of weight on them. And sometimes it comes to the front, and in this case it did. And it's a good reflection on all dispatchers, and I thought it was really great. And now, here it is, a month later, I'm finding that dispatchers are also reaching out. So thank you very much for a job really well done. Thanks. It's almost 7:30, we're just now making it to consent. Consent agenda items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may pull consent items to be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to pull a consent item? Is there anyone from the council?
I'd move approval of items 6 through 18.
We have a motion by Ms. Walker,
Second.
second by Ms. Sanders. Please vote.
Motion carries 3-0.
Upon the public hearing, we have a public hearing to consider the recommendations of approval of negative declaration number 1207 without monitoring plans for the general plan amendment number 1204 and general plan amendment number 1204 again. City of El Centro 2013 to 2021 housing element update, Norma Viacana, AICP.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. What we have before you is the final draft of our housing element. As you may recall, we've been working on this document for probably 9-10 months. We started with public hearings, public meetings, public participation, public review period. So now what we have before you is we're asking for adoption of the final document. The draft document that was reviewed by you a few months ago was submitted to HCD. HCD basically approved the document with minor changes, and we can go over those changes in our presentation. But the last step of this endeavor is to receive adoption and send it back to HCD for certification. At this time, I would pass it on to Rick Brady, our consultant who assisted us in preparing this document.
And Mr. Brady, you're from,
Veronica Tamman Associates.
yes, thank you, in Pasadena?
Yes, that's correct. Honorable Mayor and Council, thank you for having me once again to discuss the final draft housing element for the City of El Centro to cover the housing period 2013 to 2021. Okay, other way. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to review the final draft, provide an overview and a short presentation, kind of overview of the Planning Commission comments from the prior meeting that led to the recommendation for adoption, and then the HCD review and ultimately the finding of substantial compliance with state law that was received, I guess, in late June. So the background, as we've gone over in the initial public meeting, introduction work, study session or workshop, the housing element is one of the 7 state-mandated elements of the general plan, and it's the only one with a required periodic update. It's also the only document that has required a state agency review, and that review occurred during the months of May and June a few months ago. Primary components of the housing element, there's a needs assessment, go through an analysis of demographic and housing, demographic changes and housing, the city's housing stock and special needs groups to determine what the various housing needs of the community. We look at various constraints on the development of housing, including city-imposed development standards and land use controls, and also environmental infrastructure constraints. We look at various opportunities for providing housing. The primary component of that is the land inventory or the sites inventory, which is located in Appendix C of the housing element. And then we look at the prior plan from the prior year, and all that information feeds into a new housing plan for the coming 2013 to 2021 housing period. Includes policies, programs, and objectives. A major component of this update process was demonstrating adequacy of your land inventory to meet the city's RENA, or the allocation of housing units provided by SCAG. SCAG distributed, the SCAG distribution for El Centro was 1,924 units. Break that out, it's almost 500 very low, 300 low, 300 moderate, and another 840 above moderate income units. We were able to demonstrate through a variety of methods that the city had adequate capacity on existing sites, existing vacant sites, undeveloped sites, and that no rezoning or upzoning would be required. The inventory demonstrated there's over 400 acres of developable land, over 2,000 unit capacity, and in fact we identified a surplus capacity of almost 240 units. And there's the breakdown by income level. All of this was agreed to by HCD. And then the sites in the document, there's an overview of where these sites are located, and each one of these properties are tied to a detailed table that lists them by parcel, which is required by state law. So the different quadrants, you can show that they're spread out in different areas. The housing plan is the section, it's the kind of the meat of the policy portion of the document. The rest of the document is technical in nature. The plan is kind of saying what the city is going to do to further housing opportunities in the city over the planning period. Includes goals, policies, and programs, and the idea is to meet the needs of all economic segments of the community, including special needs households, persons with disabilities, persons with developmental disabilities. The document has 14 programs compared to the prior cycle had about 50 programs. And the 14 programs address the 5 programmatic areas that are required to by state law, and those are summarized on the slide. So So our update process, as was mentioned, we started in December of last year. We went through an initial joint Planning Commission City Council study session to introduce the housing element update process, take feedback from the community and from members of the commissioners and the City Council members. Then we went through a process working with staff to develop the draft. In that process, we identified some needs to do some cleanup in the zoning ordinance that was required by, we knew from prior experience with other jurisdictions that HCD was going to hold firm that certain things related to transitional housing, emergency shelters, and supportive housing had to be meet their interpretation of state law before they would move forward with certification. That cleanup was done. We completed a draft document presented to the Planning Commission and City Council, and that was sent to HCD and reviewed by the state. Their review, I'll go over in a second, but their review found that through a phone call and just, I think the next day we submitted some minor revisions, and then they agreed that they would issue a letter, and the city received a letter in June that's saying that the document substantially complied with state law, the draft document. So now we are in the final approval process, and the goal is to submit an adopted housing element to the state for their review we want to submit the document to HCD for the certification review before the deadline, which is October 15th, and their certification review can take up to 90 days. So what we found is during the update process, there were some comments that were received from the public, also from Planning Commission, and we incorporated those changes into the draft document before we sent it up to the state. One of those was we looked at the needs of large households, and we looked at whether or not the city's housing supply was adequate to accommodate large households, especially large households with lower income large households. And as a result, we reworded some of the findings and conclusions regarding the adequacy of the city's housing stock. We determined that the housing stock actually could use additional larger size units, 3+ bedrooms, to provide additional capacity for the market to provide housing for larger households. And then we also added a policy that the city, when working with developers, would encourage the inclusion of units for 3+ bedrooms, whether they be affordable housing developers or market rate developers. And also one of the comments was, there were bilingual public notices published in an English language newspaper, which, we and staff acknowledged it was probably not the most it probably didn't reach the intended audience, and so we had subsequent notices published in Spanish language newspapers. The HCD review, I have a quick summary of the comments. The HCD requested clarification of the ministerial site plan review process versus the discretionary CUP permit processes, and all we did was just provided that clarification on which type of projects required a CUP and which type of projects required ministerial process. They also wanted more information about how the city intended or staff intends to track the development of properties identified in the sites inventory over time, to know when properties have been developed, and then continually check their compliance with the meeting their regional housing needs allocation, the RENA. We needed to add a couple explicit references in programs 3 and 9 to discuss how the city intends to interact with special needs service providers, especially special needs providers, service providers for persons with disabilities. It's just all we did was add a quick references that included them in statements that were already in the document to make it more explicit, make the city's commitment to work with those service providers more explicit. Then we had a discussion about the Senate Bill 1087 regarding the city's compliance with Senate Bill 1087, which is the prioritization of water and sewer service for affordable housing development in the case of rationing. And we added a program 8 is a new program we had to add to the document in the final housing element that tasked the Public Works Department with developing the formal procedure that's required under Senate Bill 1087. And finally, the last question was they wanted more information about how the city works with the Inland Fair Housing and Mediation Board to further fair housing choice for residents. And we explained, worked with staff, got some more information about how the city makes public facilities available, provides funding to the agency or the organization. And with those changes, they were non-substantive, with the exception of Program 14, which is adding a new program directing one department to come up with procedures within a year of adoption of the housing element. There wasn't any significant policy changes or any changes to the sites inventory or no upzoning, or they found everything adequate within the sites inventory. And then we received the letter on June 24th, 2013. So the draft that's before you includes those changes requested by HCD. Also in June, the city's Environmental Assessment Committee met to review the project's impact on the environment as required by CEQA. The committee determined that there would no significant impact would result, and there was a recommendation that a negative declaration be prepared and circulated. That negative declaration was circulated, and the public review period ended July 30th. At this time, we'd like to recommend that the City Council open public hearing for allow public comment, and subsequent to the closure of the public hearing, we recommend that the project be approved by taking the following actions. Did you want to read the motions, or how do we do it? Okay. And I'm available for any questions either before or after the public comment.
Well, let's first open it to the public to get any feedback from them. Did you fill out one of our green slips?
Yes, I have. I have a chance to bring it up.
Patrick Saldana.
Yes. I just had a slight concern with this. The element should contain an estimate of units, beds, and vouchers that are available within emergency shelters and for homeless persons within the city of El Centro. And that information does not appear to be present within it. There is estimates of the number of homeless people within the city, but without that information, it makes it difficult to determine whether there are currently adequate services available for those people. So I just wanted to express that concern at this point.
Adequate services or adequate housing?
Adequate beds, adequate shelter available for homeless people within the city.
There is a section of the report dealing specifically with the homeless population. I think you raise a very interesting point, and I'd like to get maybe a little deeper dive into the specifics of what you're asking about. I believe it's under the special needs characteristics. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
There is a section within the element that addresses homeless.
So that's page 25 for benefit of the council. So, it's Mr. Saldana?
Yes.
From CRLA?
Yes.
Awesome. I had an opportunity to talk with Ms. Viacania about your comments earlier today. So, okay, so specifically here, help me understand.
Specifically, my concern is that there should be an estimate of total units, beds, and vouchers available for the homeless population and within those emergency shelters. And while there is an estimate of the homeless population in the city, there is not an estimate of the available beds for those individuals. So without that information, I believe it's difficult to determine whether we currently have available shelter for these people.
Does it make a difference, though, that some of the homeless, if we truly were to try to find accommodations for them, it would be outside the city of El Centro's boundaries? Because I believe we do not have a shelter that houses adult men. The only shelter that I'm or I'm familiar with is in Calexico. So does that factor into the point that you're making? I mean,
I think what he's trying to address, even while we may not have a space
Right.
or shelter identified as such, we do have vouchers available that will allow them to stay in various motels around the city. And that's the point that he's making.
Yeah, I think we just kind of need to have kind of a better description of all of the services that are available, how much is available, and how well that meets the need of the homeless population that we have within the city.
Salvation Army has have a small space available for men. I don't know whether it's 6 or 8, but it's a small space available.
maybe what we need to is to ask Mr. Brady to comment with regard to how specific does our housing element need to be. I think that Mr. Saldana raises a point that we should be addressing. I don't know that this is the venue, though, for that, getting that deep in the...
Yeah, well, the housing element, we believe, and I think the state agrees that it complies with the statute as far as what's required in a housing element for analysis. That being said, if the data is available, then we could include that information if the information is readily available, and we didn't ask for it as part of our data process and incorporate it because it's just not something that we have found that is required to adequately address the statute. What we do know that is required to address the statute is coming up with an estimate of the number of unsheltered homeless population, and by like a kind of a default or de facto assumption is that that is the need that needs to be addressed with the policies and programs in the housing element. So we're looking at ways to facilitate, encourage services and shelter for those 17 individuals, including finding a zone that you went through a process through identifying zones for your emergency shelters by right as required by SB2. But that doesn't mean that it can't be included. It just is not something that was identified during the update process.
I know it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Saldana, do you have that information as to whether or not there are these vouchers available and which agencies are providing these vouchers?
I do not have that information.
I think in years past, we have gone out specifically to do a homeless needs assessment in terms of the count of homeless and how long they had been without shelter and those types of things. But if you have contact information, let's talk about programs. If it's not addressed here, certainly doesn't mean we shouldn't be addressing it other ways.
Okay.
Okay, that would be great. The question that I had for you, Mr. Brady, had to do with during the last RENA cycle. Oh, I'm sorry. Were there other members of the public? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, let's leave it open just in case somebody pops up. But during the last RENA cycle, a lot was made with regard to housing vacancy. And so for purposes of our report, those numbers are found on, or that discussion is on pages 28 and 29. And we know that the housing vacancy rate substantially increased from the last census data. How do we track that? If that number were to change? Because again, that was a really big deal in terms of those units being available and cities being allowed to count those units for purposes of their RENA allocation.
Okay, on the current cycle, I'm not sure that was considered as part of the RENA allocation, and definitely, and you didn't need to show that because you had adequate capacity. As far as tracking that from year to year, the California Department of Finance includes housing estimates annually. They're published usually in the middle of the year, but the date is as of January of the beginning of each year. And so if you wanted to go back and or actually look at how that's changed over time, you can look at it at that level of detail. For the purposes of most demographic analyses that we use the most recent either American Community Survey or census data. In this report, we use the 2007 to 2011 American Community Survey. That was an average over four years, surveys taken over 4 years to obtain estimates, and we compared that to the 2000 census vacancy. That's figure 3 on page 29.
Page 29.
Yeah, yes, but they do have for a year to year to year, if you wanted to look at it in that detail, and that's easy to pull, that spreadsheet. I can send it to staff and.
No, that's okay. I just,
But it is one of those reported statistics. So
right.
there, and then the American Community Survey is using statistical. They're applying statistics to the survey results and making assumptions based on demographics and what they know about non-response in certain communities. So it's not exactly, the data aren't. It's not like driving by and counting a physical house.
Right.
So they're making some assumptions there.
Can you tell me, with regard to figure 3, what goes into that other category? Vacant units by housing type. We have for sale only, rented or sold, not occupied, seasonal recreation, occasional use for migrant workers, and then big blob there, 37% for other.
Yes, I think you caught me off unprepared there.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't.
Because that's a huge
gotcha,
36.9%.
but that's a huge number in the other category. But maybe we could, if you wouldn't.
I can look it up right now if I have my phone.
If you can within the next little bit, and then if you look down, just under D, it looks like we got to fix that error, reference source not found.
Yes.
There's in bold.
Yes, that's some reason when these drafts get opened up in a different computer
Sometimes
system.
that happens.
Yeah, because they're auto-referenced through all the tables for the entire document, and when we open it up in one computer, that doesn't show up, and then you open on another computer, it does show up. So we'll have to scan through the document before it's printed to make sure that doesn't do that again.
I will say I'm very impressed with the quality of the final product. I think it's excellent.
Thank you.
Very, very well done.
Thank you.
Ms. Sanders?
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go back to Mrs. Saldana's question. Perhaps in our haste to try to say that we have something, we overlooked page 23, if you have the document. It lists here in it's in the paragraph, but several sentences down, additional organizations offering programs and services beneficial to the single-parent households include the Center for Family Solution and all of these. And in my mind, this would address the concerns that you have. So it's included in this document. Did you see page 23 where it says resources? Or does that not fully address your concern?
Yes. My concern is more with the fact that there is no estimate, really, of numerically how many of these vouchers are available versus how many are really needed right now.
All right, and then if we go to page 25, the homeless persons, having worked on the census since 1990, 2000, 2010, I've worked on these census, and so these census tracts are very difficult, and it tells us, even then, and more importantly, just now, the homeless population is very difficult to number.
Yeah.
They're very difficult. They pride themselves in being elusive. And so, but we do have the voucher programs that are available, and many of those agencies that are listed on page 23 offer the voucher programs for those that they don't have a standalone facility to house. But you want to see, I'm not quite sure I understand, you want to see...
For example, the HCD building blocks refer to including an estimate of the number of vouchers that are available and the number of beds that are available. Mm-hmm. So just kind of some sort of estimate of what is available to residents of the
I think that that can be found, Mrs. Villacana, through working with Salvation Army, because we give out these vouchers on a monthly basis. And so I'm sure they would be, our Women Haven, House of Hope, would be able to give you those numbers. Yeah, and that can be, if you think appropriate, incorporated in.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that information, once we receive, we can easily incorporate it. It won't affect this finding of substantial compliance.
Sure, okay. Very good. I concur with Mrs. Walker. I think this is a very nice document, and I think we're pleased that HCD found it acceptable. We want to commend yourself as well as Ms. Biancana for all the hard work. Now we're moving on for the next 7 years. Thank you.
Norma, I have one quick question. When we talk about disabilities, and we talk about housing that has doors for handicapped people that are in a wheelchair,
That's included. That's part of the special needs households.
okay. How is that?
Wider hallways.
Wider hallways. The bathrooms always seem to be a little smaller, doors rather.
Yes.
And since I'm in a wheelchair right now, I notice that all of these things I've recognized even more now. So,
Yeah, public facilities, there's a law that has to meet certain
yeah.
standards for ADA and,
Walk-in showers.
yes,
Okay, I just thought I'd ask.
okay.
Now we can close the public hearing, bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to move for approval of resolution number 13-86, a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro adopting negative declaration number 12-07 without monitoring plan for project, general plan amendment number 12-04, amendment to the housing element of the general plan.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Ms. Sanders. Please vote.
Motion carries 3 with 2 absent.
I'd then like to move approval of resolution number 13-87, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro approving general plan amendment number 12-04, updating the City of El Centro housing element of the general plan and declaring same to be the 4th general plan amendment for calendar year 2013.
We have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Ms. Sanders. Please vote.
Mr. Solomon, is that incorrect? Or you want to
Wait a
vote?
minute. No,
You want us to reballot?
please.
Okay.
There it is.
Motion carries 3 with 2 absent.
Okay, item 20, a public hearing to solicit public input on the 2012-2013 City of El Centro Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, CalPERS, and authorize staff to submit the CalPERS to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Marcelo Piedra.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor. Just a quick presentation. This is a document, a report that we have to submit to the Department of Housing and Urban Development when we conclude our program year with CDBG funds. This current program year that we're summarizing is actually our 8th year as an entitlement community. So we've been a CDBG entitlement community for the past 8 years. The program activities that I'm reporting on are from the period of July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. The funding that we had available to us for this for the 2012 program year was our actual allocation from HUD was $472,973, and then we also had available to us $62,000 in program income that's generated through our state grants that we received in the past. So we had a total of $434,973 available to us. What we were able to achieve with these funds in terms of housing was we allocated or budgeted $35,000. We ended up expending $17,596 in the various housing activities, which include our lead-based paint abatement program, asbestos abatement and testing, and our emergency owner-occupied housing assistance. We were able to assist under our housing activities 6 households. In terms of public services, which is basically the allocation that we provide to our local nonprofits, we budgeted $35,246 with $10,000 going to the House of Hope. They fully expended their allocation and they were able to assist 93 families with the funds we provided to them. Catholic Charities, their senior nutrition program, $15,200, again fully expended their funds. They were able to assist 107 families. The El Centro Public Library, as you may recall, we did set aside to cover a month of the lease agreement for the relocation of the El Centro Public Library, and we fully used that allocation. The month that we covered in this program was the month of December, and in this month of December, they were able to have 2,967 visitors in the library. So total, we were able to fully expend our allocation under the public service category.
Ms. Pietro, with regard to the El Centro Public Library, that 2,967, is that the number of people that checked out books or used the computer or?
Yes, that visited the library in that particular month. That's correct. And perhaps Mr. Banks can clarify that
I'm just
number.
thinking that number could actually be higher because we could have people that didn't actually check out
That's
books
correct.
or use
That's
the
correct.
computer. They could have been there for counseling or
For different
assistance or something else. So that
That's
number
correct.
could
So it could be-
potentially be higher, but that's a pretty good number.
Yes, it is.
Pretty good return on investment.
That's correct. In terms of fair housing, again, this does fall under our public services. Federal CDBG funds, we allocated $35,700, and then we also used part of our state program income funds, so we had $45,000 under this category, and we were able to expend $44,366, and they assisted 492 individuals during this period of time. Also, we set aside money to assist with the relocation of the library, where we actually assisted with equipment relocation, purchase of some computers for with the new library, and so we were able to expend $43,699. In this during this time frame, we actually included from December up to June 30th, and we had 36,890 individuals again do some type of transaction at the library, where the library was able to record the number of people that visited the library. In terms of public facilities, the one project that we funded or set aside funds for was the sports pavilion, which is our ongoing project that we finally have been able to start construction on. We have, since 2008, set aside funds for this project, and we have $970,799 from CDBG funds through our allocation that are set aside for this project. We have started the project, and of course we're moving forward, and we were able to expend of the $970,000 that we have, $692,468 from our state program income funds. We budgeted $664,728, so we were able to expend $275,907. So we have been moving forward with the project. Our estimated completion date for this project is July 2014. So we're hoping that we fully expend our funds for our next program year. And the delays that we've experienced with this project have cost us some expenditure issues with HUD. The good news is that the project's moving forward, so we should be able to, again, reduce this amount. But right now, we have a total of unexpended CDBG funds for this project of $667,152. But once construction gets started, that money gets dispersed very quickly.
Do we think that HUD will take exception to that?
I'm sorry?
Do we anticipate that HUD will take exception to the fact that we haven't expended on
When in April of 2014, they're going to check our expenditure rate to see if we have any, of course, the 1.5 ratio that they look at. Yes. And so we should be able to have that amount significantly reduced, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we have been reporting to them on a quarterly basis what our expenditure plan is, so we can avoid that issue. Under the demolition loan program, unfortunately, we're not able to expend any funds. As much as we promoted the program, we just did not get any. It was a loan program and people were looking for grants, and so that discouraged people from participating under this program. This money will get reallocated during our next planning cycle, so you will see other activities with this remaining funds. In terms of code enforcement, we actually set aside $72,000 and we were able to expend $51,854, and we were able to have 138 cases basically under this program. And again, this is just focusing on the CDBG eligible area. Citywide, there's more cases, but this program covered 138 cases. In program administration, we set aside a total of $106,995. We pretty much expended all of our funds under program admin. So kind of in summary, we had available to us, and this is where the expenditure issue becomes a problem, is when you have approximately $1 million in your line of credit with HUD and you don't expend it, that's when it becomes a problem. And so in terms of our housing activities, we did have funds left over. Public services, we fully expended 100%. And in our other categories, with the exception of obviously the code enforcement and the indoor sports complex, but we were able to expend $669,778 with an ending balance of $755,717. But as you may recall, we do have some funding that's still remaining from the indoor sports complex. Any funds that remain after that, then they get reprogrammed in our next program year, and that's where we open up our request for proposal process and invite projects and programs to be submitted for consideration. In terms of the $62,000 for available under program income, we did fully expend those funds. And so this pretty much summarizes our activities and our expenditures. This report is due to HUD September 30th, and we are required to do a public hearing and provide this presentation to the public. If there's any additional questions you may have regarding the report itself or the presentation, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions?
Ms. Piedra, I think your presentation is outstanding as always. I don't have
Thank
any
you.
questions. I appreciate your dedication in terms of making sure that we get the funds expended, and I hope that we continue to move forward with great dispatch to get the indoor sports
That's
complex completed on time, so that we don't jeopardize any of these funding sources.
Yes, thank you.
Where's our Parks and Recreation Director? There she is, okay. Or she knows.
Going to open this up to the public hearing. And seeing that no one wants to address the council,
Then
bring it back to the council.
Then may I move for approval of resolution number 13-88, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro approving the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report 2012 as part of the end of the year requirement report provided to the Department of Housing and Urban Development under the entitlement grantee program.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Ms. Sanders. Please vote.
The motion carries.
We have now unfinished business, discussion and any necessary action regarding consideration of a city policy relating to film production within the City of El Centro, jurisdictional boundaries and approval of release hold harmless and agreement not to sue. Marcela Piedra.
Yes, this item is being presented to you, and it was originally discussed with the council back in May of 2013. And this item relates to a request that we originally received from SCAG back in July of 2012, encouraging cities to adopt a film production ordinance in cities in order to demonstrate our commitment to film production within our communities. As provided in the staff report, we give you a little bit of background as to how we started with the development of the draft ordinance. We did, in preparation for that draft ordinance, we did have an opportunity to see sample film production ordinances from the City of Carson and also Palm Springs. And then we also solicited the input from the Imperial County Film Commission. Initially, when the item was presented to the council, we provided a draft ordinance. However, based upon comments that were received at the time by members of the council, staff was directed to meet with the Imperial County Film Commission and discuss some concerns that were expressed regarding the ordinance that was drafted, and also issues related to business license requirements. As indicated in your report, staff from the Finance Department, also City Manager and Economic Development Department met with Ms. Charlotte Teeters from the Imperial County Film Commission and addressed and discussed some of the concerns. Prior to that, our City Mayor and I had an opportunity also to meet with her to discuss some of the concerns. During the meeting, and based upon the comments received, it was determined that perhaps instead of having a city ordinance to support film production in our city, that perhaps we could consider a city policy where we basically explain the process, because that was one of the major concerns with the ordinance, was the fact that, you know, there was really no process laid out in terms of how the city was going to coordinate the issuance of film permits in our city. And so we came back, and what has been drafted is a city policy that basically explains the procedure for issuing a film permit within our city. And a concern that was expressed by the Imperial County Film Commission was the fact that perhaps by having another city department consider coordinating the issuance of film permits, that there could be possible delays. If you look at the city policy that's drafted and presented before you, we're actually having the city manager basically designate who the film production coordinator is going to be for our city. And we do make reference to the fact that we will coordinate, or our city will coordinate with the Imperial County Film Commission any type of permit that's issued for film production purposes in our city. Regarding the requirement for business licenses, our finance department did request an opinion as to whether or not any business associated with film production was exempt from our city's business license requirements, and that does not appear to be the case. Therefore, any kind of company looking at doing film production in our city would be required to obtain a city business license. And again, that process is incorporated in the policy that's presented before you. If there's any questions or any comments regarding the policy, then I'll be happy to make an attempt to answer those.
Ms. Walker?
I'm very pleased to see the City of El Centro moving forward with the policy statement. As noted in the staff report, this was advocated by Southern California Association of Governments in response to so much film production leaving the state of California. So we really wanted to collectively emphasize the importance that we place on retaining and encouraging as a means of economic development within the state of California, getting most of our cities, to the extent we can, to adopt similar ordinances or policy statements. So I'm very pleased to see this come forward. The only proposed change that I was wondering that we may want to consider, and that's found on page 2, the definition, item number 7, where we refer to the Imperial County Film Commission specifically as the nonprofit public benefit corporation. I'm wondering if we want to say there or successor agency or something else, because if the Film Commission, if that were to change, or another group were to come in and undertake essentially the duties and responsibilities, this would then have to come back to council. And I'm thinking a way to prevent that and maybe move it into the future without it having to come back. Can we talk about a successor agency?
That could be in there. Also, the reason we looked at the policy, it's very easy to bring back and have it changed.
Yeah.
We don't have to have a 30-day notice, another 30.
Right.
So we can do it
I mean,
either way.
Either way, I'm just thinking that if we said Imperial County Film Commission, blah, 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 or successor agency, or something, but I'm open
The successor, I have no issues with.
it just means that we would have to track it, that if something were to happen to that agency, we would then need to bring back the policy statement.
Okay, so I think adding successor agency is just as well. It gives the intent of the policy.
It just gives us
Just, the name successor agency just rings multiple bells, because I'm thinking that we have that already as it relates to. So let's
Are you
not.
having bad flashbacks?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Just give it some other name. Don't use that one, please. But I don't know what else we'd call it. But since it can be done with a great deal of ease, do you think, Ms. Walker, that it's something we really need?
Well, I'm just thinking that if it were to change, we wouldn't have to bring it back. It's just another
would
one of
already
those
be in
things that the
place?
city staff would have to track and bring back. Whereas if we changed it to successor agency, we'd be covered.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sid. The city attorney, can you come up with something?
We will come up with something.
Okay.
We'll get the intent of
So
that.
that
in the policy.
would be my one change.
Just for the benefit of the audience, they see me having conniptions and wanting to pull my hair. It's only because we're using successor agency now as it relates to the loss of our RDA. And so all of that, I didn't want it to anyway be confusing. That's the only thing. I didn't want it to be confusing.
Well, we'll get language that gets that intent in place.
Okay.
Does Ms. Stevens have anything she wants to say? See if she has anything to say.
Charlotte, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I'm just here if you have any questions.
Okay.
If there's nothing further, I'd move for approval of the city film production policy statement relating to film production with the city of El Centro's within, I guess, the city of El Centro's jurisdictional boundaries. And approval of the release, hold harmless, and agreement not to sue, which relates to the city's film production policy statement.
I have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Ms. Sanders. Please vote.
That motion,
Motion carries.
Ms. Walker, did include the slight modification that you're asking for,
Yes,
correct?
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Number 22, discussion on any necessary action regarding the determination of the city's position on the proposed 2013 League of California City Annual Conference resolutions.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to review these?
Yes, I have, and it's my recommendation as the city's voting member that we support both resolutions. If I could just, there's two resolutions that are proposed for the annual conference. The first resolution calls upon the governor and the legislature to work with the League of California Cities in providing adequate funding and to prioritize water bonds to assist local government in water conservation, groundwater recharge, and reuse of stormwater and urban runoff programs. So I'm asking for concurrence with a support position for that. The second resolution calls upon the governor and the legislature to enter into discussions with the League and California Police Chiefs Association representatives to identify and enact strategies that will ensure the success of public safety realignment from a local municipal law enforcement perspective. I think both of those warrant our
warrant
support
support,
position.
yes. So, do we need a motion? Is that the motion, or?
I am asking for a motion and
Okay,
direction
yes.
from the city to vote at the conference.
All right, then I would concur with that, and that would be a second. I just would like to add a piece to that as a little bit of a side note. The second particular resolution, as it relates to realignment, when the resolution committee when they meet, which is prior to the General Assembly, I have reasons to be, it may be modified, so be looking to that to see how much they may change or modify that. But if it keeps the spirit of the law in place, or the spirit of the resolution in place, so that cities would in some way receive some funding to do this, then
Very good.
I support.
We have a motion by Ms. Walker, a second by Ms. Sanders. Please vote.
The motion carries 3-0.
Public comments. The City Council welcomes your input. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council on any matter not listed on the posted agenda. Pursuant to the Brown Act, no action will be taken on any issue brought forth under public comment. Please complete a speaker slip and submit it to the city clerk prior to the start of the meeting. Unless the mayor extends the time, there's a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a presentation? Seeing none, we will go down to mayor and council members' report.
Thank you. While we were dark in August, certainly did not mean that we were not busy. Ms. Walker and I both participated in a press conference hosted by Senator Wesso as he provided the ICTC with $330 million, which is a grant, and this will assist the ICTC in purchasing buses. The buses that we had the opportunity to sit on is extremely nice. This will certainly be a benefit to those individuals that are riders of or users of this of the bus. So I think it's a wonderful thing that we were able to get. The grant, of course, was written by the ICTC staff. Attended a luncheon sponsored by the Office of Education, along with many others that were out there, and we were trying to determine, at least I was, what Mr. Ken Kay was trying to tell us as it relates to our kids ready for the 21st century. It seems to me that many of our schools are already incorporating some of the particular proposals that he had suggested. So I thought, all right, it's nice to know that he came from wherever he came from to tell us that we're probably doing everything that he had already suggested we do in his particular book and his presentation. I also participated in a conference call with Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She represents California, but specifically the area of Oakland. And the conference was having to do with the federal budget, which is like the state budget, a mess. Unfortunately, many of the issues that we're so wedded to, as far as CDBG, sequestration, and all of the effects of that, doesn't seem as though it's going to navigate its way through Congress in any time soon. So she wanted us to just know, be of good cheer that eventually they will get something done. We're yet to determine what that may be. Unfortunately, she didn't have any real promises, well, I say promising, anything that she could give us to help us feel encouraged. There were probably over 100 of us on this conference call with her. We had a chance to have questions. It was an open mic and you could pose questions. And unfortunately, she says, you know, we're working on that right now, and so everything is being worked on. So I thank you very much for giving me this chance to explain that while we were dark in August, we were not idle. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Walker?
Yes, that was pretty exciting, the ICTC presentation, and we were very glad that the bus was air-conditioned. I was happy to attend the Welcome Back Teachers Breakfast for the El Centro Elementary School District, and this was a really great summer in terms of ribbon cuttings for our sports complex and also our water splash pad thing. That's really, really cool to see those moving forward. Also was able to attend the Junior Chefs program. That was really cool. You were really, really busy with the Parks and Recreation this summer, and that was awesome. I also made it out to the library a couple different occasions and was very encouraged to see the number of folks that we had participating in your summer library programs, Mr. Banks. Lastly, I did attend the Chamber of Commerce board meeting in the absence of our mayor, and they are asking for a couple of updates that I will get with the city manager about with regard to the Dogwood crossing overpass, and also the synchronization of our streetlights seems to become an issue again on certain stretches of the roads.
Thank you. I was also at Ben Wessel's, but I also wanted to tell you,
Sorry.
I was asked to participate in a roundtable by governing
Magazine?
Magazine.
Are you in there again?
no,
Oh,
but I just attended, so they haven't had the pictures taken.
all right, we'll wait,
developed.
we'll wait.
But it was really unusual because when they said participate in a round table, they had a horseshoe type round table with about 35 people around it. And they gave us 5 areas that they could talk about, but they sent the information out. It was public issues, labor relation, risk shifting, debt capacity, and practical ways to address the problems. And so they sent these out, but they told everyone that these were just examples. Lo and behold, they wound up being the real thing. So it was quite enjoyable. But I'm glad I went. A lot of good information. And I want to thank the city staff. Gee, I called on everyone that I knew to give me some information. What's the gentleman's name? Marcella, that's over in the Public Works? Abraham, yes.
Yes.
I had Abraham. I had Letitia. I had Mrs. Sanders. Gee, I can't think of the other people. I think Grace.
All of you he called upon, just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Because you'll be like me, he may forget. I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan.
Yes. Grace. They all gave me some very good information and very timely stuff. And so I certainly did appreciate it. In my mind, I was the coolest person there with all the information.
Oh, well, without a doubt,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that participated.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
that's it.
I do have one request from Ms. Villacania. Several months ago, we requested an update from AT&T with regard to how they were progressing on the tower over on State Street. And I would like an update since they kind of indicated to us that there was a time frame and they were going to be moving forward. So I'm hoping to hear great things about how AT&T is progressing with their tower.
Yes, they're scheduled to be here, our next meeting on the 17th.
Okay.
Christine Moore and her members of her team. So they would be able to answer all those questions.
Okay, but what have you seen that they've been able to accomplish?
The building plans were submitted back in July, I believe, late June, early July. The plans were reviewed by ESCAL. There were just minor revisions that needed to be completed by AT&T, so those were sent back to AT&T. As of today, we have not received the revised plans from AT&T.
And what about pulling a building permit?
They cannot pull until those plans, the revised plans are approved, so they have not pulled the
So we've
building.
actually had very little in the way of progress
Basically,
since
yes.
they were here a few months ago. Okay. Would you please add those dates to your timeline?
Sure.
As to their non-responsiveness?
Okay, I will.
It's very disappointing.
Mayor, before you, we do not have dates for this, but they'll be shortly coming. Will be the dedication of the Buckland parking lot project and the soccer field parking lot at Sunflower. While some folks who are not familiar with the projects may not see those as major projects for the families for the last 30 years have used those parking lots, is a big upgrade.
That's huge, that's huge.
And so,
you know, the soccer season is getting...
Yes, there is, the school is working on they have an element to this of putting a pass gate for special events and things, and open house, but they're working on that separate on a different timeline, and they'll have it ready when they need it. But that project is there. I think, Mr. Hagan, they're down to striping. Am I correct? Yes. Right. So you should get a call, and the dedication is because there are some other funding agencies who would like to be there for that. So it's for us, it's always important.
That's cool. Very cool. Thank you.
One last thing, Mrs. Sanders and I continued to talk about Ben Wessel for a moment here, and we found out that we were talking about two different things.
So I want you to know, I didn't forget. The event that I was at, he was not.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. The one that I was at was the grand opening of his office.
Ah, okay.
And the one that Mrs. Sanders was at where he was giving out money, that's the one I needed to be at.
That's the one you needed to be at.
Without saying anything else, we will now adjourn.
Okay.